Turn pages into progress with Books in Bites by Ray Hathorn. We bring you the best books in digestible, thought-provoking summaries so you can learn on the go.
That's us.
You got it.
Yeah.
Today, we're going deep, deep, deep into the happiness hypothesis.
Ooh, fascinating book by Jonathan Haidt.
That's right. And this book, it's all about exploring happiness, but
Not just like, a self-help, feel-good kind of way.
no, not at all. Haidt, he blends ancient wisdom with modern science.
Yeah.
So he's combining philosophy and psychology, even neuroscience.
Yeah, to get at like the core of what makes us, us.
Exactly. And he uses this really cool metaphor.
Oh, yeah, I love this one.
Throughout the whole book.
Mm.
The mind is like a rider on an elephant. Okay, so picture this.
I'm picturing it.
The rider, that's like our conscious reasoning, right?
Yeah.
It's us trying to make logical decisions, trying to steer our lives in the direction we want to go.
Right. Like we've got a plan, we're in control.
Exactly. But then there's the elephant.
Uh-oh.
The elephant, that's our emotions.
Our powerful, sometimes out of control emotions. Yeah.
Right. And they can totally take us off course, like way off.
That image, it really captures that inner struggle we all feel sometimes, like you know what you should do, but then bam, your emotions just pull you in a totally different direction.
All the time. So he's not just, presenting this like it's a problem to solve. It's like, this is just part of being human.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, hey, this rider and elephant thing, it's not going away, but if we understand it...
we can actually use it to be happier.
Exactly. Okay, so let's break down this whole divided self thing a little more. What are some examples from the book that really show that tension, between reason and emotion?
Oh, there's so many good ones. Like he talks about how our brains are wired to react really quickly to threats and rewards.
Right. That's like from way back our evolutionary past.
Yeah. So that means our emotional elephant, it often reacts before our rational rider even knows what's going on. It's like, boom, emotion first, thinking later.
Right. Right. Have you ever snapped at someone and then immediately thought, ooh, why did I say that?
Oh, all the time. Or you should walk away from an argument, but then your anger just takes over.
It's like the elephant saying, nope, we're charging in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're wired this way, are we just stuck, doomed to be ruled by our emotions?
Well, that's where this idea of neuroplasticity comes in. And this is really exciting stuff. Our brains, they're not fixed.
What? Really?
Yeah. They can actually change throughout our lives if we put in the effort. So we're not stuck with those unhelpful thought patterns or, those knee-jerk emotional reactions. Haidt talks about things like cognitive therapy and mindfulness, which can help us rewire our brains.
Wait, hold on. So we can actually change the structure of our brains. That's amazing. But how? Does he get into the science-y stuff?
He does touch on it. It's like when we practice new ways of thinking and behaving, we're strengthening certain pathways in our brains. Think of it like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Okay, so by consciously focusing on positive thoughts, doing mindfulness exercises, or working with a therapist, we can actually change how our brains react to stuff.
Exactly. It's like we can train our elephant to be a little calmer, a little more responsive to the writer.
That's so empowering.
Yeah.
It means we're not just puppets of our genes or past experiences. Yeah. We have a say in shaping our own minds and our own happiness.
Right. You're not just along for the ride. But Haidt points out it's not always easy. And one of the things that can make it tough is this thing called hedonic adaptation.
Hedonic adaptation. Okay,
Yeah.
That sounds kind of intimidating. What is that exactly?
It's basically the tendency to get used to things over time, good or bad.
So, remember that amazing new phone you got? How exciting was it after, a month, a year?
Exactly. You get used to it, and that initial buzz fades away.
That's kind of a bummer. So are we destined to always go back to this baseline level of happiness no matter what good things happen?
Well, not necessarily. Haidt talks about ways to combat this adaptation. He's big on cultivating gratitude.
Gratitude. Okay. So appreciating what we have.
And savoring positive experiences, really soaking them in. Instead of just letting those good feelings fade into the background, we need to actively notice them and appreciate them.
Makes sense. It's like training ourselves to really be present in those happy moments.
Exactly. We're fighting that urge to just jump to the next thing, the next source of happiness.
Okay. That makes sense for everyday stuff.
Yeah.
But what about those big life changes, like getting a promotion or moving to a new city?
We'd probably adapt to those two to some extent, but the key is those experiences can also lead to personal growth, right? And that can contribute to a deeper, longer-lasting happiness.
So it's not just about that initial high. It's about how those experiences change us, make our lives richer. Okay, so we've talked about the rider and the elephant, the power of changing our minds, this whole adaptation thing. But where does pleasure fit in? Like just plain old enjoying stuff.
Great question, and that leads to another big idea in the book. The difference between fleeting pleasure and, like, true lasting happiness. He brings in ideas from ancient philosophers, like Epicurus, Aristotle, and he connects them to modern research.
Okay, so like eating a giant bowl of ice cream might feel good in the moment, but it's not going to lead to long-term happiness.
Right. Pleasure is definitely a part of a happy life, but it's not the whole picture. Haidt argues that real happiness, the kind that sticks, comes from doing things that are intrinsically rewarding.
Things that have meaning to us, that line up with our values.
Exactly. It's not about just chasing those little hits of pleasure. It's about finding things that give our lives a sense of purpose. And you know what? This actually leads us to another cool concept, the virtue hypothesis.
Ah, the virtues. Kindness, gratitude, humility, all that good stuff. But does he really go into those? I mean, those are often seen as like nice ideas, but not crucial to happiness.
He totally does. He argues that these virtues, they're not just nice, they're actually crucial for our well-being.
So being a good person isn't just about following some moral code. It actually makes us happier. How does he connect those?
Well, he explains how these virtues, like being kind and honest, they help us build strong relationships.
Okay, yeah.
And they increase self-respect. And both of those things are essential for a fulfilling life.
I can see that.
Yeah.
When you act in ways you're proud of, you attract other people who share those values. And that builds a stronger sense of connection, right?
Right, and a sense of purpose. It's like a positive feedback loop. You feel good about yourself, which helps you do more good things, which makes you feel even better. It just keeps building.
I love that. When I think back on times I felt truly happy, they've often been connected to those feelings of connection and purpose. And you know what else I've noticed? Those moments Haidt talks about, those transcendent experiences, like moments of awe, deep connection, spiritual insights, those have a big impact too.
Absolutely. Those moments where you feel a sense of wonder and awe, like you're connected to something bigger than yourself. Haidt talks about how those experiences, often linked to things like meditation or being in nature, can seriously boost our well-being.
I've totally had those moments.
Yeah.
Like standing on a mountaintop, staring out at this vast landscape, or getting lost in a piece of music.
It's like you tap into something deeper, beyond the everyday stresses. And that feeling, it sticks with you.
It does. Even after the experience is over, you still feel a sense of peace and happiness.
And those transcendent experiences, they can change our perspective, remind us how everything's connected. They can even inspire us to live more meaningful lives.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation so far. We've talked about this inner battle between reason and emotion, the power of literally changing our minds, the importance of gratitude, the difference between just pleasure and deep meaning, the surprising power of virtues, and these awesome transcendent experiences. And we haven't even gotten to the social connection piece yet.
I know, right? We've just scratched the surface of the happiness hypothesis. There's so much more to explore. But before we jump into that, maybe it's good to let all this sink in for a bit. What do you think?
Totally agree. It's a lot to take in, but it's fascinating stuff. We'll be back soon to continue our deep dive into the happiness hypothesis. We'll be taking a closer look at the role of social connections and a whole lot more, so stay tuned.
Can't wait.
Okay, so we're back, diving deeper into the happiness hypothesis. Before the break, we were talking about those transcendent experiences, those moments of awe and connection, the kind that can bring you a deep sense of peace and happiness.
Yeah, those moments, they can really be transformative, can't they? It's like they give you a glimpse beyond your everyday worries, Remind you of where you fit in the grand scheme of things.
They really do shift your perspective. It's like suddenly the world looks new again, and all those little things that were bugging you, they just kind of melt away.
And those perspective shifts, they can be powerful, Haidt points out how they can actually lead to lasting changes, like in our values, our priorities, even how we act. It's like they awaken a deeper understanding of ourselves and like our connection to everything around us.
It makes you wonder why we don't seek out those experiences more often. We get so caught up in the daily grind, we forget to look up and appreciate, the beauty and the wonder that's all around us.
That's so true. We get fixated on goals, to-do lists, and we forget about the stuff that brings us joy, meaning, connection. Haidt's saying those moments of transcendence, they're not a luxury, they're essential for a truly fulfilling life.
Okay, so how do we make sure those experiences happen? Like, do we all need to start meditating or going on silent retreats to tap into that sense of awe and wonder?
Not necessarily. I mean, things like meditation, spending time in nature, they can definitely help. But transcendence, it can pop up in unexpected places too, you know? Maybe it's a piece of music that really moves you or a deep conversation with someone you love.
I get it. It's about being open to those moments.
Yeah.
Paying attention to the things that spark a sense of wonder, no matter where we find them.
Exactly. Cultivating that curiosity, that appreciation for the world, and being willing to look beyond the surface, because that's often where the beauty and meaning hide.
Speaking of connection, we haven't really talked about one of the biggest things Haidt explores, how important social connection is for happiness. I mean, we all know hanging out with loved ones makes us feel good, but Haidt gets into the science behind it, right?
Oh, he does. He's got a whole chapter on this, digging into evolutionary psychology, tons of research, all pointing to how vital our relationships are for our happiness. He basically says our brains are wired for connection. Like way back in human history, being part of a group was crucial for survival.
So it's like a deep down need built into us, not just about having fun with friends, but about belonging, fitting in, which makes sense because loneliness, that can be really isolating and depressing.
Right. And the quality of our relationships, that makes a big difference too. Strong connections, they give us support, love, a sense of belonging. And that can help us deal with stress, contribute to a greater sense of well-being.
I know that's true for me. When I'm feeling down, being around people I care about always lifts my mood.
Yeah.
And even when things are going well, sharing those good times with others, it just makes everything sweeter.
Absolutely. Our relationships, they're a huge source of joy, meaning purpose in our lives. They give us that sense of belonging, a support network, and chances to grow and learn.
Didn't Haidt also talk about how giving back, being kind and generous, that can also boost our happiness?
He did. He's big on this idea of reciprocal happiness. Yeah. When we focus on helping others, on their well-being, we're not just making their lives better, we're also enriching our own.
So it's like that Ripley effect. Kindness, generosity, compassion, they create this wave of positivity.
Yeah, and they foster a sense of connection, like we're all in this together. It's not just about what we can get from others, it's about what we give. That seems to be a big theme in the happiness hypothesis, wouldn't you say?
I think so. Haidt challenges that idea of individual happiness, the me kind of thing. He says real fulfillment comes from connecting to something bigger than ourselves. It could be our relationships, our communities, or even a purpose that goes beyond our personal goals. This is all so inspiring, but I gotta admit, it also makes me think about those times when life throws us curveballs, those challenges, setbacks, maybe even tragedies. Where does happiness fit into all of that?
And that's where Haidt gets surprisingly optimistic. He acknowledges that suffering, it's just part of life. But he doesn't say we should avoid it at all costs. Instead, he suggests it can actually push us to grow and, believe it or not, even be happier in the long run.
Wait, so going through hard times can actually make us happier. How does that work?
I know, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? But he uses research, real-life stories to show how adversity, if you face it with the right mindset, can actually make you more resilient. It can make you appreciate life more and give you a stronger sense of purpose.
So it's not about seeking out suffering. It's about recognizing it's going to happen and that it can actually have a positive impact if we let it.
Exactly. He wants us to adopt what he calls a growth mindset. So instead of seeing challenges as these impossible roadblocks, we see them as chances to learn and develop. Think of it like when you face a challenge, you got to adapt, right?
Well,
you got to learn, you got to grow. And those experiences, even if they're tough at the time, they can make you stronger, more resilient, better able to face the next challenge.
That makes a lot of sense. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right. But it's not just about being tougher. It's about understanding ourselves and the world around us better.
Right. We often learn the most from our struggles. They shape us, make us more empathetic, and can actually lead to greater happiness and fulfillment. So instead of trying to dodge every challenge, we should embrace them, see them as opportunities to grow.
I mean, within reason, of course. It's not about looking for pain or glorifying suffering, but when challenges come up, and they always do, we can choose to face them with this growth mindset, knowing they might lead to something better, something more meaningful.
I like that perspective. Take some of the sting out of tough times, knowing they could be leading to something good.
Exactly. And this ties back to that idea of meaning and purpose. When we have that sense of purpose, even the toughest experiences can be seen as chances to learn, grow, and contribute to something bigger than ourselves.
So big picture, we've talked about understanding our divided selves, the power of changing our minds, the role of gratitude, savoring positive experiences, the difference between fleeting pleasure and deep meaning, the surprising power of virtues, the transformative power of adversity, and how vital social connections are. Is there anything else we need to consider on this happiness journey?
Well, there's one more piece that's really important, this idea of finding your flow.
Flow. I've heard that term before, but not sure I totally get it.
Flow is that state of being completely absorbed in something, where you lose track of time, you're just totally in the moment, and you feel this effortless joy and fulfillment. It's like being in the zone when everything just clicks.
Oh, I totally get that. Like when I'm writing and the words just pour out effortlessly, or when I'm playing music and get lost in the melody, those are the times I feel most alive, most engaged.
Exactly. Perfect examples of flow. And Haidt says experiencing flow is key to happiness. When we're in that flow state, we're totally engaged, using our skills to the max, and feeling deeply satisfied.
So it's like this sweet spot where challenge and skill meet. You're not bored because you're always learning and pushing yourself, but you're not overwhelmed because you have the skills to meet the challenge.
You nailed it. And finding things that let us experience flow, that's crucial for our well-being. Those things might be different for everyone, but the key is to find what brings you joy, challenge, and that sense of absorption.
So it could be anything, really. Playing sports, painting, solving problems at work, as long as it makes you feel engaged and in the zone.
Exactly. And the more we have those flow experiences in our lives, the happier and more fulfilled we'll be.
This whole conversation has really got me thinking. Happiness, it's not about feeling good all the time. It's about building a life that has meaning, that's full of purpose, connection, and growth.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Happiness, it's not a destination, it's a journey. And it's a journey with both joy and sorrow, challenges and triumphs, moments of flow and moments of struggle.
So it's not about avoiding the tough stuff. It's about learning how to deal with it in a way that lets us grow and thrive.
Exactly. And while there's no one-size-fits-all recipe for happiness, the happiness hypothesis gives us these valuable insights and tools to help us create a more fulfilling, meaningful life.
It's like a roadmap, showing us the way to a richer, more satisfying existence.
And the best part is, it's a journey we can all take, no matter where we're starting from.
I love that. So where do we go from here? How do we take all these insights and actually apply them to our own lives?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? I think it starts with looking inward. What are the things that really matter to you? What brings you joy? What challenges do you need to face to grow?
It's about figuring out our values, our passions, our goals, and then making sure our actions match those things.
Exactly. And being aware of our thoughts, our emotions, cultivating gratitude for all the good stuff in our lives, nurturing our relationships, and seeing challenges as chances to grow.
It's about living a life that's both meaningful and enjoyable, full of purpose and connection.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And listen, it might not always be easy, but pursuing happiness, it's a worthwhile journey. It's a journey of self-discovery, of growth, and it can lead to a richer, more fulfilling life.
I'm starting to feel a lot more hopeful about this whole happiness thing. It's not about finding some magical state of bliss. It's about actively building a life that reflects our values, that brings us joy and meaning.
That's the spirit. Happiness isn't something that just happens. It's something we create through our thoughts, actions, choices.
So we're not waiting for happiness to find us.
Yeah.
We're out there looking for it, making it happen.
You got it. We have more control over our happiness than we think.
Well, I think we've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive into the happiness hypothesis. Feeling inspired to take all this stuff and start applying it to my own life.
Me too. And hopefully our listener feels the same way. Remember, chasing happiness, it's a journey, not a destination. And it's a journey worth taking.
Couldn't agree more. Who knows, maybe along the way we'll even stumble into that flow state,
I hope so. Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's take a second to think about everything we've talked about so far. We've explored so much about happiness, from what's going on inside our heads to the power of our connections with others.
It's been a wild ride, and I can't wait to see where it takes us next. We'll be back soon to keep exploring the happiness hypothesis. We're going to dive into the practical steps we can take to create more happiness in our lives, so stay tuned for more insights and inspiration. All right, we're back for more happiness hypothesis.
It feels like we've been on this incredible journey. exploring all these different sides of happiness.
It really has been. We've gone deep, haven't we? Inside our minds, the power of those connections we have, the surprising upsides of, facing challenges. So much.
And now I'm thinking, how do we bring it all together? Like,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways, the stuff we can actually use in our everyday lives?
That's the big question, right? And I think the cool thing about the happiness hypothesis is it doesn't give you, like, a one-size-fits-all answer, no magic formula.
Right, right.
Instead, it's more like it gives you a framework, a way to understand all the different things that add up to a fulfilling life. I like that, a framework. So not a bunch of rigid rules, but like guiding principles, stuff we can adapt to our own, individual lives and situations.
Exactly. For me, one of the biggest takeaways is happiness isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we actively create through our thoughts, our actions, our choices.
That's powerful stuff. So we're not just like sitting around waiting for life to happen to us. We have a say in how happy we are.
You got it. And that all starts with understanding ourselves, right? Remembering that, internal struggle between our rational writer and our emotional elephant. That metaphor, it's pretty sticky, huh?
Oh, definitely. That's one of the things that's really stayed with me in this book. It's such a clear way to picture how our thoughts and emotions, work together or sometimes fight each other.
Totally. And once you see that dynamic, you can start working with it instead of letting it control you. That's where stuff like mindfulness and cognitive therapy can be helpful. They can, train our minds to react to things in a better way.
Makes me think about that whole hedonic adaptation thing. How we get used to things, good or bad. If we're not careful, we can get stuck in this cycle of always chasing the next thing, the next source of happiness, never really appreciating what we have.
Oh, yeah. And that's where gratitude comes in. If we make an effort to appreciate the good stuff, even the little things, we can fight that tendency to just adapt and move on and actually feel lasting happiness.
It's like we got to train ourselves to see all the good stuff that's already there instead of always focusing on what's missing.
Exactly. And gratitude, it goes hand in hand with focusing on meaning and purpose, not just those quick hits of pleasure. When our lives are lined up with our values and we feel like we're part of something bigger, that's what brings real, lasting fulfillment.
It's like finding that sweet spot where your passions, your skills, your values all come together.
You got it. And that sense of purpose, it can come from anywhere. Your work, your relationships, hobbies, creative stuff. It's about figuring out what truly matters to you and then making choices that support that.
And we can't forget about those connections with other people. Haidt really makes a strong argument for how important social connection is for happiness.
Oh, for sure. We're social creatures, right? It's in our DNA. And our relationships, they give us this sense of belonging, support, love, purpose, stuff that's crucial for feeling good. We've got to make sure we're nurturing those connections.
And it's a two-way street, right? Not just about getting support, but giving it too. Haidt talks about how being kind and generous, it actually boosts our own happiness, as well as the happiness of the people around us.
Right. When we do good for others, it creates this wave of positivity, and it strengthens that feeling of, we're all connected, part of something bigger. It's a win-win.
I was surprised by what Haidt had to say about adversity. He actually makes a good case for how going through tough stuff, even really painful stuff, can make us happier in the long run.
It's a powerful idea. He wants us to see adversity not as something to be scared of, but as a chance to grow, become more resilient, and maybe even appreciate life more deeply.
Those challenges force us to dig deep, find strengths we didn't even know we had. And when we come out on the other side, we can feel stronger, wiser, more capable.
Totally. It's about embracing the ups and downs that come with being alive and knowing that even the hardest times can teach us valuable lessons, help us grow.
So big picture, we've talked about understanding that internal struggle, cultivating a growth mindset, practicing gratitude and mindfulness, taking care of those social connections, giving back to others, and even embracing challenges as opportunities for growth.
And maybe the most important thing is happiness isn't some finish line we cross. It's a journey. It takes effort, intention, and being open to learning and growing throughout our lives.
I love that. It's a reminder that none of us are perfect. We're all works in progress. And chasing happiness, it's not about reaching some perfect state of bliss. It's about constantly working towards a life that's meaningful, joyful, and fulfilling.
And that journey, it's different for everyone. What makes one person happy might not do it for someone else. It's about finding what works for you, trying new things, and building your own personal happiness toolkit.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the happiness hypothesis, what's one last thought you'd leave with our listener?
I'd say never underestimate your own power to create happiness in your life. It's not about waiting for things to magically get better, for the world to change. It's about taking charge of your own well-being and actively making choices that bring you joy, meaning, and connection in every area of your life.
Beautifully said. And remember, you don't have to do it all alone. We're all in this together, supporting each other, learning from each other, inspiring each other to live lives full of purpose and happiness.
That's the spirit. So keep searching, keep growing, keep connecting, and keep choosing happiness. It's worth it.
And that wraps up our deep dive into the happiness hypothesis. We hope you've enjoyed exploring these fascinating ideas with us. Until next time, keep those pages turning and those minds expanding.